What if you could help others to find the power to heal themselves? Physically, emotionally, and spiritually.
When I started teaching my classes, it was in 2002, and I was just doing the past life regressions and contacting the subconscious part. But then as the time went on and we found how powerful this was and what we could do with it, a lot of the students began saying, advanced past life regression doesn't really tell what it's all about. This is so much more than that. We think you should change the name. So it was a few years ago we decided to change the name to Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique. And this is the healing technique that we've now been teaching it, since 2002, that's 12 years.
What if you could time travel with them? Visit mythical places or angelic realms, other worlds, other galaxies. Help others to speak to their higher selves. You can. Dolores has taught thousands of people from across the world how to use QHHT, and now you can learn her method by going directly to dolorescannon.com. And don't forget to mention the discount code MORETALKS. Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Kevin Moore Show. Now if you want to stay up to date with all my latest videos, just click that subscribe button below, as this really helps to support the show. If you're new to the show, I interview guests from a spiritual perspective, covering mainstream and alternative subjects and much more. Now on today's show, I'm about to be joined by my guest, Stephen Bassett. Now Stephen is a political activist, lobbyist, and he is the founder of the Paradigm Research Group, and he joins me today to discuss his work and much more. Stephen Bassett, thank you for joining us.
Hey, Kevin, it's been a long time. What brings you to the United States, if I may ask?
It's been 9 years. Let me just take this earpiece out because I don't need that anymore. 9 years since you last did your interview with me in Cardiff when I was on TV over there. And I'm going to link that interview. Yeah, I'm going to link that interview below as well. There's so much has changed since then. Since I just, what brought me to the States? Well, I got married in 2018, and then I got divorced this year. So I stayed.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So, it's.
You married an American lady, I assume?
Yes.
You pulled a Nick Pope. You pulled a Nick Pope.
Pull a Nick Pope.
One of our gals.
Yeah.
I told Nick some time ago, who's still married. Nick, UK owes me a great woman, but I hope it was interesting. And so you're going to be staying in the US for a bit?
I am right now. I've just applied for my green card, and getting divorced wasn't on the cards. Do you know what I mean? And it's been a process. But like I say to people, I'd rather be out of the wrong relationship than having to stay in it, for many reasons, which I will one day talk about. I will. Believe
me, if you lasted 5 or 6 years, I think you're over the national average. So it's okay.
You know what?
I've never been married, so all I can do is go, hey, I hope it was good. I have no personal experience here.
I will say that after having my first experience of it, I'm not saying I'll never get married again, but I will say that, I don't know, I just feel that maybe it's quite antiquated, and actually it's a man-made thing. I have to always remind myself that, it's not a natural thing. Animals don't marry each other, do you know what I mean? But we have this old system in place, from time before us, that, and it's got some good qualities, I'm not saying that, but yes, yeah. Anyway, well, honestly, when you agreed to come on the other day, I was just so happy to get you back on, because
sure,
hats off to you, mate. Honestly, for still doing this same work, at this point, and this is not easy work, to keep, with so much going on. I mean, there's so much has gone on. So before we get into anything in depth, let me just ask you just to explain a little bit about yourself. Just give us a bit of background, because there'll be some people watching this who will not know who you are, maybe.
Well, the reason I'm still doing this work is because it hasn't succeeded. If it succeeded, I'd be doing other things, though related. Essentially, I didn't know exactly what was going to happen when I decided, okay, I'm going to involve myself in this issue back in 1995, late 95. I didn't know. I knew that I definitely needed to do something different, that I needed to get involved in something that I felt was important, because prior to that, my life had just been inconsequential. Not terrible, not awful, compared to many others, but of no value really to me, frankly, other than, hey, you wake up in the morning and you go about your business. So I made a decision, and I was very lucky. I was able to initiate my engagement of the issue by volunteering for John Mack's organization in Cambridge, Massachusetts. The Harvard-trained psychiatrist who is now a legend for his work in the early 90s with contactees, the books he wrote, and so forth. And that gave me a kind of a 4-month opportunity to get into things and think about it. And it was there that I realized that, based upon the who I am, I'm basically an activist at heart, who involved, and it was time to get involved. And I had an issue that was extremely important and yet neglected. And so I entered the issue as a political activist. And I still am a full-time political activist on this issue 24 years later. And because of the nature of the issue and the truth embargo that the government imposed on it, it was not a very competitive environment. I registered as a lobbyist on the issue with the Congress, which was cool and got me some press no one ever had. I started the first political action committee a couple of years later on the issue. No one had ever done that. I held the first conferences in the Washington area, including one in downtown Washington at the Press Club, on what we call now exo-politics. No one ever had. No one saw the value of engaging this issue in a pure political way. I had very little resources, did not have connections, though I knew Washington pretty well. So I was limited in what I could do. But nevertheless, as the only guy kind of doing it, I was able to get media attention. And so while I couldn't really lobby the Congress, if you're not with a serious firm, if you're with a serious NGO, or you don't have some serious money, they're not going to talk to you. And if your issue is the extraterrestrial presence, they're really not going to talk to you. You're lucky if you can get a meeting with a 19-year-old intern. But nevertheless, I rummaged around a little bit, but mostly engaged the media. I lobbied the media heavily, and that was my contribution. And I think now about almost 600 articles have been written about this issue, referencing me or Paradigm Research Group. And many thousands have been written about this issue since 1996 that I probably played a role in helping to get. Okay, good. But it's a slow process, very slow. But it's part of activism. If you look at every major activist movement of the 20th century, civil rights, women vote, the independence movements from colonialism, media played a major part of it. If it's not getting covered, if the media is not paying attention and writing about what's going on, it's almost impossible to motivate the authorities, the governing authorities, to do anything, because they essentially they can do what they want. Nobody's paying attention. But it's so slow process. And now we're 26 years in, and possibly we are almost at the end of this phase of this issue, which is the acknowledgement phase, the confirmation phase, in which we go from a government which is saying that there's nothing here really important, nothing that's a threat, nothing to see here, move along, to the government finally acknowledging, yeah, we have non-human intelligent entities and non-human built technology engaging us. And that's a 26-year span, in the sense of the modern era. I call, actually it's more than that, it goes back to 1991. So we'll call it a 30-year span. And that's not a long time for an issue of this magnitude to finally achieve what we'll call the breakthrough. So I shouldn't complain. And I'm still here, so I definitely shouldn't complain.
Yeah, now, are you normally based in Washington, D.C.? Is that where you normally are based now? Don't you have an office out there?
I have been based in the Washington area since 1995, six, and I still am. As it happens, a little over a year ago, I was able to get an office in the National Press Building, and that's my Washington base. It's just 2 blocks from the White House. The press club, the National Press Club, which has been very much a part of this activist movement for years and years, is right upstairs. I belong to that, so it's an ideal situation to have as things move forward. However, there have been other developments, and I also now have a studio in Hollywood, California, studio office. Now, there's been developments there which I can't talk about yet, but they're significant. I hope to be able to announce these formally no later than the end of September, but I'll be operating bi-coastal with studios on both coasts, and in a position to engage the disclosure process and, even more importantly, the post-disclosure era in a very sophisticated way. So I'm happy about that, to be sure.
I think I know where you might be going with that, media-wise. Yeah, very, very interesting. Do you ever take any time off, Steve? I mean, from this? I mean, what do you have a day off?
I don't. I haven't had a boss, and I don't know when. I just never fit in. I was a terrible employee. I got fired, quit way back. So I don't have a boss, and I don't have a 9-to-5 situation. It all just flows. It just goes. And I assure you, while I can't afford to take formal vacations to, beautiful spots around the world. It's not like I'm in a grind. I just move forward, and it's like a flow, and I can do this or do that. But I'll tell you, if you're an activist, and I've studied the lives of some activists, if you're an activist and you get into an issue that is really important, and not that they aren't all important, I'm just saying some are more important than others, some have more implications than others. It's hard to, you can't treat it like a job. You can't say, oh, I think I'm going to take 2 months off now. No, you are in it, and you stay in it until you get the outcome that is the righteous thing. I mean, and you hope that the outcome you're seeking is in fact the righteous thing. It's possible to be an activist with great passion, pursuing an outcome that is wrong, that is not ideal, not what we want, not important. It could even be nefarious. There are plenty of activist zealots who have pursued issues and taken people to very bad places. So it helps to be on the right side of history and the right side of the needs of this planet and the human race. I have no doubt at all that the disclosure movement is one of those issues, one of those areas. And again, when you get involved in something at that level, it's what you do, and you just don't take, you don't treat it like a job. and your time off would be, hey, what the hell, you watch. For me, taking time off is watching CNN and news.
That is funny, Steve.
But by the way, if
yeah.
you're going to live that way, you really don't want to be taking anybody along with you for the ride. They're going to have a real problem with that. And so
when I think of you, Steve, I always think to myself, do you know what, dude? It's never too late. And why couldn't there be someone out there that would want to come along for this next part of your journey? Why couldn't there be?
Well, the odds are small.
Oh, you're narrowing that down by saying that, Steve.
Let me put it this. No. Well, I'm also 74, but the point is that I made one key mistake before I made the decision to one major mistake that I made prior to getting into this field late in life. I neglected to get rich. I was terrible at making money. I just didn't have it in me. I tried this and I tried that. I tried to be the entrepreneur. I got into absolutely just not there. It just wasn't in me. In other words, I should have, what I should have done is in my 20s, after I got out of school and realized that my degree wasn't going to go anywhere, I should have joined up with some really good quality activist organization, an NGO with a lot of money, and worked for a good cause within a larger group. I didn't do that. I decided the best way to deal with the Vietnam War and the fact that every illusion I had about my country had been shattered was to go hit tennis balls. And I hit millions of them and got pretty good at it, so that I was able to make a living as a club tennis pro. And I discovered pretty quickly that you could do that the rest of your life because it's pretty straightforward. You just keep hitting the damn tennis balls and teaching people to play, and you make a living. But then it occurred to me that then what? So I didn't make any money. So when I got into this field, I think I had 18 cents when I arrived in DC that last time. And so again, this is not the recipe you need to have to find any individual who is thinking, oh, I want to sign up for that. And so I realized early on that I was trading that off. You can't. Let me go for it. Imagine you're a husband and you've got a couple of kids, maybe maybe they're even in their late teens, and maybe you have another job. And you decide, I'm going to engage the extraterrestrial issue from a political standpoint. Essentially, you have just assigned these people in your life a role that it is not right. You just shouldn't do it. It's just
okay. But I'm going to say to you, brother, it's never too fucking late, mate. It's never too late for anything. Okay. No matter what age that you are, right? And that age that you are right now is not that old, right? In today's standards, right? Do not write yourself off, Steve. You can. I still believe that there's always time to manifest and do the things that you still want to do. That was one message from me to you. That's my message.
If anything happens there, you'll be one of the first people to know, and I'll make sure to invite you to any festivity.
I would be there. I would be celebrating with you for you. Don't worry about that. Yeah, I know you've given a lot for this. Honestly, I get that. And who is Steve nowadays compared to when Steve first started out on this journey? Do you think? Because we're all on this journey. No one ever speaks about your sort of spiritual side to your journey. What has been your spiritual evolution, or has there been one? Have you must have gone through some dark nights of the soul, surely, with what you're doing.
Whether it's an asset or a liability, I am a secular man. I do not have beliefs of that type at all. So that kind of simplifies things a little bit. I will be the first to tell you that I'm quite sure the universe holds some extraordinary secrets still that would amaze and astound. And would be nice to live long enough to see some of those things. So in that sense, it wouldn't surprise me to learn some things which are wow, very 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 profound. But and so I have a respect for that. I have a respect. I do have a science orientation, though I never practiced it. So to call me a scientist is ludicrous. But I view the world from a scientific perspective, and I anticipate some extraordinary things will come about.
Isn't that interesting
But
that you come from that perspective? Remember what you're going to say. I've just got to say, you come from that perspective, yet you might be trying to bring something about here that where these beings are so spiritually or something more beyond evolved than we've ever been in some sort of like esoteric sense. And you're kind of supporting that, and yet that's not. Do you know what I mean? It's not your forefront in a sense. That.
I don't have a spiritual take on ETs. I don't know if they're spiritual or not, and whether they're evolved. This is kind of a somewhat how would you say? It's not a very precise term. What the hell is evolved? I don't know. I know that one way you measure civilization is technological. And that's a very straightforward measurement. It's not complicated at all. And their technology is superior to ours. Whether they're spiritually superior, I don't know. They all may be atheists. They all also may know some things about the universe that we would almost view as spiritual. I don't know. And I'm not going to speculate there. Again, I have taken the view that or at least from an early age, I was relatively convinced that there was no religious interpretation of our reality, no God, no ancient manuscripts that described anything that I consider to be actually valid from the standpoint of the real world. Now, what people hold in their mind, whatever views they have, whatever belief structures they have, whatever imaginary worlds that they conceive, such as great novelists, that's real too. Okay, it's real. It is real in the sense that it is in the head of a sentient being. Okay, but that's not the real we're talking about. And I think most people understand that. You can have a view in your head that gravity is an illusion, and that would be a real thing you carry in your mind. But if you jump off a 50-story building, what the reality of that thing in your head now faces the reality of the universe, and the laws of the universe trump ideas. Ultimately, they trump the laws of the universe of the ultimate ideas. You go against them and you pay a heavy price.
Absolutely. After doing this show for a number of years, and even more so since we last spoke 9 years on, I tend to feel that actually the true nature of what this consciousness is that we are, right? I don't think anyone or no book has really got any of the answers. They may touch upon them, but and even if the books say the same thing, I don't think it means much. I think this is my take on it. I feel that I'm more than my body, but anything more than that, I don't know. Is there an implication?
I think that's a very good way to think of it. But we're not there yet, but we're getting there. I recently read an extensive article. Not an extensive article, but I read a very, very interesting article. I don't have the name handy, but essentially it was describing research that's now being done on the brain. And by brain, I mean the components of it, that are actually getting down to the quantum level, where they are explaining certain quantum things that happen that may help to explain how the brain is able to build up and function in the way that we do. And it's not surprising because, forgive me, one of the things that's always astounded people is that the brain is so small, and yet it does so much. And also the variety of things the brain can do. And so it doesn't surprise me that it is almost certainly operating at the quantum level. We know that we're toying with the idea of quantum computers. We may get there, we may not, but one of the things that you learn from that particular work is that a quantum computer, if it could be made to work, would be able to do extraordinary degrees of calculation in a faster time in a smaller space. So now, one of the reasons that I think disclosure is worth pursuing, and disclosure meaning the final confirmation event where we're told the truth that ETs are here, is that I do believe it leads to open contact in a short amount of time, maybe 2 years. And open contact may actually lead to exchange. Now, what I mean by exchange, I mean there's information, not something being told to a contactee who's being taken up for their annual or biannual examination, right? I'm talking about formal communication between one or more of these entities, these species, and our officials, our authorities, whatever you want to call it, and the potential for actual information about how the world works being conveyed to us. In which case, in a very short amount of time, since I think disclosure could happen this year, we could end up learning things that will clarify a lot of these particularly challenging mysteries that we've been confronting, and do it very quickly and soon, as opposed to taking another 500 years. There's no law in the universe that says that, oh, you can only learn something in this particular pace, okay? In other words, you know this, if you want to know that, you have to wait 600 years. No, there's no law of the universe says that. And we do that all the time on this planet. We will engage a less developed society, and if we're not there to destroy them and kill them all off, which often is the case, but not always, we were able to oftentimes provide information to that society, this new group of individuals, that they didn't have, and completely transforms how they function. We do that on our planet. Would it happen in a galactic sense? Why not? And so there are things we need to know, because we are challenging certain technological and scientific red lines that if we cross those without more information, we're going to get ourselves in a whole lot of trouble. And so the disclosure leading to open contact, leading to profound new information about how this world works, that's a pretty exciting prospect, pretty positive in my view, and one of many reasons why disclosure as an activist movement needs to be supported to a degree far, far greater than it has been, though it's improving a little bit. But I assure you, given the importance and magnitude of this issue, the support that it has gotten from extremely wealthy people, from powerful organizations, has been just pitiful.
Absolutely, it has, and we're going to get into all that as much as we can do for the limited time that we've got. And any beings coming down here, let's just say they're beings, if that was the case, right? Extraterrestrial beings. Maybe where they come from, they don't have borders, and they don't have monetary issues. Is even that, without borders or monetary issues, and caring for each other and us and themselves more? Is that more spiritual? Maybe. We tend the basics things down here we are struggling with so badly. Those that are without and those that are with, and the gaps and everything else. And I, maybe I think to myself sometimes, maybe we choose to come here. Maybe we choose to come here to have these experiences, and this is a great planet to have those experiences. If there is such thing as a sort of something more than if our consciousness is more, if it continues in some ways that we can't understand and we're not supposed to understand, because maybe we're supposed to get on with this right now. Whenever I speak to you, I just feel that I can feel your kindness coming up from you. You may not feel you've got it, but I think you do, to have to be an activist and for what you're trying to give to humanity. I do feel your kindness and that you're trying to give back and help, right? But if we can't get these basic things right, we're blowing each other up today. 11 Americans died in Afghanistan when this was taped just a few hours ago, right? Suicide bombing. why would something so intelligent and maybe want to interfere with the basic stages of where we're at right now? Would they want Islam and Christianity and other religions in space? I mean, would that be more of an issue for them to have religion in space? Do we need to evolve past that thinking of religions and stuff like that? What do we know?
It's not surprising that the prospect of having access in small or large part to the matrix of extraterrestrial knowledge and extraterrestrial civilization is a perfect opportunity for everybody on the planet, certainly everybody that wants to invest time in this, to project on that still unknown canvas whatever they want, whatever they would like, whatever they would hope for. I understand that. It's okay, but let's be clear. We do not know much about, we know some, but it comes through a somewhat complicated door, and I'm referring to contact phenomena. We don't know much about these beings, their civilization, their past, and how they operate, what they believe, what they don't believe. So we're just guessing, we're projecting. Okay, I get that, but it can be a problem because you've got a lot of different people projecting lots of different hopes and dreams on the same canvas. What I'm trying to do, or what are the things I'm trying to do as we end the truth embargo, is to help people get into a more comfortable frame of mind about all this. In other words, hold off, right? Be open, be respectful of other people's views. Don't fight. Why? All right? Why fight over any particular perspective or anybody's view about this that's different from yours? You don't know enough to fight, so don't fight. Move towards getting the information, right? Help the disclosure movement. And I'll give you a perfect example of this because you just brought it up. It may be that all of the extraterrestrial civilizations have borders. They have, quote, nations on their planets. They just don't go to war over them. All right. It may be that all of the extra civilizations have money. Money is a very simple and straightforward way to operate and cooperate and handle the needs of humans and maybe any civilization. They just spend it better. We don't know, right? We don't know. And so there is going to be a very measurable amount of religious interpretation of this issue and messianic. There's going to be a little cult activity, and there's not a thing we can do about that because there's 7.5 billion people on this planet, 7.5 billion points of view, billion different worldviews, though they tend to cluster in groups. I get that. And so it's going to be complicated and a bit messy, and people are going to exploit these perspectives, which is happening right now in a purely terrestrial way. You have the ability now to exploit any point of view on a relatively large scale, which simply wasn't possible easily 50 years ago. Now, pick a point of view, get a Twitter account, a Facebook account, start pumping information out, and the next thing you know, you've got 150,000 followers, and you're a thing, even though the point of view may be utterly false, ridiculous, stupid, dangerous, doesn't matter. So now let's take that to the galactic level. We need, I guess, and you said it right. When you're facing something of this magnitude, and I include the worldwide civil rights movement, which has had some successes here and some failures there. the women's right movement or empowerment movement and others, when you're operating at that level, the first and foremost thing you've got to have is humility. If you get into something at this level with arrogance, you're already in trouble, right? You have to be humble in the face of this, right? You're talking about the formal confirmation of the ET presence at a time that we are a global technological spacefaring society. That is not the same thing as ETs coming down 3000 BC and hanging out here or hanging out there and doing whatever the hell they want and then taking off and leaving no trace behind. So I believe there was that in the past. That's not what's going on now. All right. We are at the level where I believe it's not unreasonable to say we are capable of operating as part of their world, as part of their alliance, not as a full partner perhaps, but certainly as an intern. That took 4 or 5 billion years to get to, including the last 10,000 years of, quote, civilization, all right? So we are not cave dwellers. We're not chariot riding Egyptians. We are spacefaring, super high-tech civilization. And the fact that some of us are destructive or stupid or idiots or whatever doesn't matter. The civilization in the whole is what matters. And they are engaging the whole. And the whole, if you give it a fair examination, is profound. What we can do now, what individuals can do now in our modern world is extraordinary. And so we need to give ourselves more credit. We need to focus on the extraordinary aspects of the modern global civilization to be able to respect why in the last 74 years, we have been getting intense engagement from these entities. We need to try to figure out why that intense, and that's where I come in, and I'm going to be doing a lot more about that soon. And we need to then decide where it's going and why it's going. That requires open mind, humility, some respect, right, and some flexibility. If you want to navigate this and not only come out well on the other side, but come out with integrity on the other side, feeling good about yourself on the other side, which doesn't always happen, I assure you, when these kinds of paradigm shifts take place.
Maybe if such contact was made, maybe it would be a key or a big part of our evolution to bring peace within ourselves. Forget the technological advantages and all that, right? Yes, they matter, of course they do. But what peace would it bring to some of us to know such a thing exists, such a truth existed, regardless whether the government kept it from us and all that, right? But just to know that we're not alone. What would that be enough to shift some people's paradigm to say, what the fuck have I been doing with all my life? Do you know what I mean? Is this what life was about, or is it something more now? Or would it be like such shifts in understandings of like just the basic things? I mean, but then some people may say yes, but they're going to tell us truths maybe that aren't true. Like we are forever. Our soul continues. And all. If they did talk like that, I'm not saying they would do, right? But but there would be division in what they're going to say. To like you say, there'd be different people, different groups with different understandings. But I think the biggest thing with all this is that would it bring some global peace that we could never have had that experience had not happened? And if that was the case, why isn't it happening sooner? Do they know something that we don't know about the speed at which such things need to take place? Is it people like you that need to come forward first to say this is what it would bring, the peace between humanity it would bring? Do we want to come a bit closer to a place or a space that they would be able to come in and interact with us in the way that you're suggesting, but only when we've kind of grown up a little bit to get to that place where they can meet us on a level, not technologically, but just peacefully?
2 points. One, again, I get back to the humility issue. 2,000 years ago, a man, I believe it was a man, was preaching a story, a message, a worldview. He had 12 disciples and at least one woman. So I think there really were 13 disciples. And I view him as an activist. I believe that what took place in Judea back then was, in fact, an activist movement. It certainly had all the accoutrements of that. And so I can say now, whether it was more than that, well, I don't know. But was it an activist movement? You bet it was. And this message, as you know, was about peace. It was about forgiveness. It was not about war. And that message was so important and endemic, I think, to what people want, that it developed very slowly over time until it became the core of one of the great religions in the world. We call it Christianity, fine. And not that Christianity hasn't had some very bad things happen as part of it, but the point is the fundamental message is the same. That's one of the reasons why religions tend to rely on books, a key book, what do you call it, sacred book. In the case of Christianity, it's the New Testament, which hasn't changed. Okay, so that was 2,000 years. Okay, so those who thought that the Messiah had brought a message to the earth from God about peace on earth and loving your neighbor, that would be happening really soon. Well, no. In those 2,000 years, we've had, I don't know how many wars, 500, 1,000, I don't know. We've slaughtered hundreds of millions of people. So obviously, the idea that you can kind of call the timetable on something like that, I don't think so. And so what will happen if we have extraterrestrial presence? What's the difference between a similar message turning up, I'm not guaranteeing that, and what turned up 2,000 years ago in Palestine? There is one very profound difference, several very profound differences, which should be considered. Right? 2,000 years ago, there was no internet, there was no Facebook, there was no telephone lines, no fax machines, no newspapers, nothing. All right. Things tend to move slow, very, very slow. And it took a very long time for a sizable, and any even modestly sizable number of people to even know that this gentleman we call Jesus existed. And so it slowly developed, little by little by little by little. Okay, fine. Now let's move to the present. The day the President of the United States, I would prefer it be the President of the United States, doesn't have to be, steps out on the end of Cross Hall on that podium. We've seen them at many, many times with all those flags behind them in the hall. I've been there, and there'll be about 100 media sitting in chairs in the East Room. The day that president comes out and confirms that, yes, probably because of the hearings that are coming and the testimony that he, along with all of us, will see, will say the testimony is confirmed, I think, that we have an extraterrestrial presence. I've talked with my top people at the Pentagon, et cetera, and there is an ET presence. This phenomenon is extraterrestrial. Some of it is, and extraterrestrial technology is involved. You're not alone. The day that happens, it will take about 48 hours for 90 plus, 95 plus, 98 plus people on the entire planet to know it. Now, think about that. In other words, think about what happened during the time of Christ and the slow evolvement of that message of love, and think about how fast this happens. And so 7 billion plus people learn within a short amount of time they're not alone in the universe. Doesn't mean they believe it. Some of them may not believe it, but most will, because the president will not be the first president. Every other national leader will confirm this very quickly. So you have an information impact, or more importantly, you have a worldview changing event of a scope, size, and rapidity that nothing that has ever happened since this planet formed out of the accretion disk around our sun, which was a long time ago, before. This is beyond a scale that anyone can really measure or think about. And I can extend that statement to a whole bunch of other things, and that's another thing I talk about, to people who are scratching their head going, well, what do you think is going to happen if this announcement takes place? I mean, what should I do? Whatever. I'm just trying to give them a sense of how huge it is, because it's like standing in front of a mountain that's 20,000 feet tall, and you've got your nose up against the rock, right? And you're being told, can you tell me about the mountain? And you're somebody is standing back 15 miles trying to explain to that person whose nose is up against the side of the mountain how big it is. And they're going, I can't see it. I don't see how big it is. Is it really that big? I mean, I just got this rock in front of me. It's kind of like that. So I don't know, obviously, and nobody knows.
No one knows what the outcome of that day would be. No one knows. Or the days
well, the
that
outcome,
would follow.
or pick any particular point in that outcome.
Well, the sun is still going to, I know the sun is still going to rise the next morning, but we're still going to have to feed ourselves. There's still going to be patients in hospitals that are going to need treatment. Sure. I'm still breaking up from that girl, or, I'm coming out as bisexual and I've got my issues with that. Whatever it is, there's still the human conditioning problems day to day that, we still need to teach our kids, who's going to take that garbage out, who's going to feed the baby in the morning, who's getting up for the early shift. There's still the human things that we've got to go through, right? But what would be that? Would it be? Some of these governments like China and Russia, which are quite oppressive to their people in some respects, especially China. What would that do to the? What would that break down? Would it change anything? It would definitely change. It's unknown. And what if these civilizations that are interacting with our space have had this experience with other cultures and it's not gone favorably, so that this time it's being done completely different. I'm not saying that's a fact. I don't know. I'm just putting shit out there. Do you know what I mean? It's are we really, 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 really ready for such an interaction? I'd like to say yes.
Doesn't matter.
No, maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's beyond anyone's control.
No, it doesn't matter if we're ready or not. It's going to happen. It's going to happen, right? I want to make it really clear to people what is going down now could give a flying fig whether we're ready or not. We are part of an historical wave. There have been other waves, okay? Were we ready for the combustion engine when you see all the terrible things that have come from it? Could we have held it off?
What if you're 100 years ahead of your time, Steve, in your thinking right now and your activism?
Again, it doesn't matter whether I'm ahead of my time or behind my time. I am simply part of an active movement that is underway. And now, look, I know what you're getting at. An activist is supposed to act, right? A journalist is supposed to report and maybe investigate. So the role of the journalist is to tell you what's going on and to tell the truth. And that's a very helpful thing, and we need a lot more of it. An activist is basically trying to get people to act. So there is an aspect of this, again, another example of why humility is absolutely essential. Let me give you a perfect example. You are younger than I am, so you may not recall the details of this, but you're a well-read man, so probably you do. The Civil Rights Movement principal prize that they had been trying to get for well over 100 years was a Voting Rights Act and a Civil Rights Act that guaranteed certain things which had not really been properly done, even under the Constitution. It took 100 years. Okay, that's how long that took. And that's not counting the 300 years of slavery prior to that. But after the Civil War, I think it's fair to say that from that point on, there was a movement of some kind or another saying, okay, if we're not slaves anymore, if we are essentially free under the Constitution, then this should happen and that should happen and whatever. And it was been a very long, bumpy, crazy ride, but it was essentially started then and ended almost exactly 100 years later. Now, guess what? As you get into the 20th century, as you start moving towards 64, even as late as the 50s and the 60s, there were people, intelligent people, not necessarily nefarious people, who were writing commentary. There was no Facebook or Twitter or anything, and so it was harder to have an impact with your thoughts back then, but you could still have an impact. And here is what they were saying. Look, we appreciate what you want, civil rights movement. We understand the injustice. We appreciate what you're having to deal with. It's not fair and so forth. But look, the South is not ready to end segregation. If you force it, you're going to create a lot of disruption, a lot of unhappiness, blowback. Why not let it evolve organically? Just go along with this, and eventually the South and other parts of the United States that were deep into segregation to work their way out of it, might take 2 or 3 generations, but eventually the children of the children of the children will go, no, this is wrong. And they will end segregation. I'm not joking here. This was an intellectual position put forward very, very often. Now, obviously, the leaders of the civil rights movement said, no, not a chance. We want it, and we want it now. And that became one of the great phrases. What do we want? Freedom. When do we want it? Now. What do we want? End of the war. When do we want it? Okay, fine. Now, you say, okay. So what the activists of the civil rights movement were saying is that we have made an intellectual and to some degree emotional and maybe intuitional judgment that we feel very confident about. We feel history will support this, that ending the segregation in this country as soon as possible is the right thing to do. And all of your arguments to the contrary, that is what we're going to do. Now, if they had been wrong, if passing the civil rights movement had led to a massive response from the South, the malicious forming and the slaughter of people and God knows what kind of havoc, there would have been historians and others saying, boy, you really screwed up. Okay. Every single activist movement can be looked at this way, and there is not an exception. In the effort to free India, a vast nation from British rule, no offense intended, Kevin, there were tons of both Hindus and Muslims saying, oh God, no, British rule is the only thing that's keeping this place together. It's going to take us into the future. If they leave, chaos will reign. Okay, well, here's the deal, right? I've made a decision. Others have too. Because there's not a whole lot of full-time activists in this field, because the truth embargo is what made this particular activist movement unlike any other in history. There is not a single one like this one. I don't have a whole lot of other well-known activists writing pieces in Vanity Fair along these lines. I made the decision that ending the truth embargo as soon as possible, since it was long overdue, is the right thing to do, and I'm going to help do it come hell or high water. And if I am wrong, then I would expect to have a very, very dim, dark historical legacy for which I'm willing to apologize in advance. I mean, if you're wrong, you're wrong, and you should apologize, but I'm going to apologize in advance. I am sure as hell not going to apologize for the activist movement to end this truth embargo there is so little doubt that it is the right thing to do in my head that I'm not going to do that. I mean, this is an example of me doing that. I don't recall the last time I said anything like this. It's worth saying, but I'm not going to do it much more. I may not do it again for another year. That's just the way it is. And there are plenty of people out there that are not really activists, but about them because of social media. I don't have a huge following, but I got enough. I get a pretty good stream to know that they feel the same way, that this is the right thing to do, period.
There's so much I want to speak to you about, Steve. There's so much. I mean, you're just full of great stuff, right? And I know that we haven't got the time right now. I just know we haven't, right? But let's just. There's a few things I still want to just touch on while we've still got a little bit of time left with you. And thank you for everything that you've shared so far as well, right? So just how can people help you right now? I mean, what's one thing anyone watching this that feels empowered to I want to help Steve. I want to help him with the cause. What can they do to help you?
Look, here's the proper question. What can people do to help the disclosure movement? Well, for one thing, support anybody and everybody who is addressing the truth embargo. Right? Whether it's a podcast or a website or an organization or a journalist that's writing favorably about, or I say favorably, appropriately about it now. Whatever. Could be a comment, could be an email saying, right on, thank you, brother, whatever. Those who have substantial funds, it would be wonderful if they could put some of that money into the disclosure process. When I learn about something like, who is it? I can't remember the name. There's somebody that's giving $2 million, or I don't know how many millions of dollars, to Harvard astronomer Avi Loeb, so they can set up some new special kinds of extraterrestrial life, which is nothing more than an upgrade. Just sigh. I just don't know what to say. In other words, if you want to search safely with no threat to the truth embargo for radio signals, which SETI has done since 1958, signals which, if they arrived, would probably be coming from a source that was 1 million, 2, 3, 4 million years old, and they never have found anything. They've gotten hundreds of millions of dollars to do that. And now you want to put more millions of dollars into looking for extraterrestrial life when they're here right now, okay, in our skies, picking up relatives of yours and taking them up for occasional examinations in their craft. You could see why that would be irritating to any activist trying to get the confirmation of their presence. In other words, the truth embargo the government has imposed is so good that very smart, wealthy people are throwing millions of dollars down the toilet looking for something that's already here. So to those out there that are starting to see the light and figure this out, that have more money than they could spend, consider putting some of that money into the political activist movement to end the truth embargo. Our elections in the United States in a presidential year cost $4 billion in order to elect another group of politicians that are barely better than the group that they're replacing. We spend untold billions of dollars in lobbying for every conceivable thing you can imagine, many of which we don't want any part of. Political spending and activist spending is massive, except on this issue. And you may say, well, how did the extraterrestrial disclosure issue slip through the cracks? Because it is the only issue in the world today that the major governments of the world, without exception, for 75 years have said to the journalists and the academics and the philanthropists and the American people, what extraterrestrials are you talking about?
Absolutely, and one of the best cases I'll always refer to is Roswell. When it comes to cover-ups and actual real cases, genuine cases that actually may have happened, and Your website is, just remind us of your website, Steve. It's been coming up on the screen.
ParadigmResearchGroup.org.
Okay, and that's one way that they can connect with
Subscribe
you.
to a free website there. There's a contribution page. There's a
Yep, that's what I
huge.
was going to say. Well, I'll link that in the description below, the direct links to that contribution page as well. The links are coming up on the screen for and people that were listening to the podcast can just jot that down, your website as well, where they can get in contact with you as well. Do you do a podcast? Are you still doing that?
I initiated with an introductory video, the Disclosure Wire podcast many months ago, but I decided to hold off. All right. For the right time. Well, the right time is coming pretty soon.
I think you'd do bloody well as a podcaster, and I think it would really help with your cause as well. I think it's going to be interesting to see you doing that, and some of the guests that you're going to get on as well. Within this industry as well, I use that word industry, but within this field, it's when people first get into this field, it's confusing because there's a lot of people with stories out there. There's a lot of I would say misinformation. What do you think about some of the stories out there that are not genuine, not true? What damage does that do to any of the credibility of the genuineness of the phenomena, do you think?
I have a very straightforward answer to that. All right. The problem is not the public and any stories they may come up with or many misunderstandings they may have, or anybody that tries to take advantage of the interest in the field by putting on a show that's not true but entertaining. No, that is not the problem. It has never been the problem. The problem with respect to disinformation, misinformation, misdirection, outright lies, subversion is the United States government and its allies, which have gone along with the truth embargo. They are the ones that created the intellectual ghetto of ufology, not us. All right.
But for those that are actually mentally unwell, so hosts that are mentally unwell and mentally unwell people out there who come up with stories that are not true, and a lot of people follow these stories and believe in them, right? Yes, the US government's got the biggest lie for denying with the truth embargo, but within this community, for those who knowingly or mentally, when are mentally unwell, are doing what they're doing, should we not point that out when these stories aren't true, just to help people, just to say, well, steer away from that because it's just not true?
No, absolutely not. When the disclosure advocacy movement is significantly funded, when there are more than one or two lobbyists on the Hill, when the journalists are digging into this issue and doing real investigation and covering it and bringing up important information, when we've had hearings on Capitol Hill, when this issue is being properly engaged to the point where we're going to get the truth and we're actually going to have proper government involvement, we won't have to point out the mentally ill. They will not be an issue. All right. They will not be important. They will just be mentally ill, and we need to offer them some help.
Yeah, no,
okay.
I totally agree with you. At the point where you're coming from, yes. So my next documentary is based on it's based on Project Camelot, and based on some of the story, some of the whistleblowers that she has. One of them is a guy called Captain Mark Richards, and he's her top whistleblower. He's a guy that's been in prison for 38 years for a murder he says he didn't commit, and that he was actually part of the secret space program. And he was framed for his work within the secret space program. Well, of course, I've interviewed 26 people and more that knew him back in the day, including the police officers that arrested him back in the day. And of course, none of it's true. I mean, it was never true in the first place. But I mean, what else is he going to do in prison but to come up with a story like that? And then the documentary evolved into some of the other people that are out there as well. Putting out these stories. And again, when you look at the evidence, none of it's true whatsoever. Right now, that I'm not after damaging the industry, but I think I'm going to put the documentary out anyway. But I just it's we've lost our discernment, some of us, and just because someone says something's true, you'd think that someone's done their due diligence to find out, if you've got a platform that if you're going to promote something that it is true, but that's not the case. But no.
Watch the documentary Social Influence. we have entered, we didn't ask for it, an age in which everybody can say anything and actually get an audience. And so the amount of things out there that aren't true that people are reading is at unprecedented levels. Okay, that's just the way it is. We didn't, again, were we ready for the internet? No. Did we get it? You bet. Were we ready for Facebook and Twitter? No, but we got it. Okay, so we know that. And there's been analysis of this, and there's going to be writing of this. And by the way, now that you've told me this, it's now official. I know nobody who is not doing a documentary. So now it's 100%. Now, let me give you this piece of advice, whether you want it or not. Do this doc. Talk about these stories. Show the evidence that the stories don't hold up. But don't make the doc an attack on the field in general. Don't make the doc an attack on these people. Make it it's like
no, you can't, because when one finger's pointing at someone else, it's four pointing back at you. Absolutely, I get that.
Yeah. In other words, make it informative, make it an education to show how. But ultimately, understand this: if there had not been a truth embargo on the ET issue since 1947, the chances of most of these stories coming up in play not going to happen. And so if you can do that, I think you're going to be offering something helpful and positive.
Actually, when I knew I was getting you on, I thought to myself, and when I started just to research you again, right, I actually did think about the documentary I'm making, and I thought about you, and I thought about, hey, look at that combination there, like what Steve's doing, and what this doc is, and how actually that does fit in there. I actually was thinking about that. Actually, it's funny you say all this. Yes, and I will come from that space, I promise you. And maybe there's something in this doc that may involve you.
Let me give you an analogy. I'm the king of analogies. I have them. They come to me in the middle of my sleep and at all times. Think of it this way. You are the human race is in an ambulance, and it's at risk of dying. There's people inside the ambulance that are applying, various procedures, trying to keep it alive so that it makes it to the hospital in time. And that ambulance is roaring down the highway, going to get to the hospital, and hopefully we're going to work out fine. The ambulance can't take time to pull off the road every time it sees a pothole and fix it. Right? Or there's a broken side rail. Wait a minute, let's stop for a second. We got to fix that side rail, right? We can't have a broken side rail here, right? And just keep doing that because it'll never get to the hospital in time. That's the way to look at a movement. The movement is to get the goal and the prize, not to create a perfect journey there. That is not possible. And I assure you, whether it's the southern states, whether it's the British, whether it's the US government and its truth embargo, they want you to take as long a time as possible to get to the hospital. They want you to deal with every single pothole in the road. As long as you're doing that, you are not focused on the authoritarian issue.
And infight as much as possible. That's also a good place to be. Great. Let them destroy their own selves. What truth? I get it. So this thing's not even gone out yet, and I get it. So it will be coming from the right space.
Yeah. Look, there's a way to do every documentary done 1,000 different ways. There's a way to do any doc so that whatever the content is, it has a informative and beneficial effect. Right, and if you can do that, you always win as a documentary.
And I'm going to consider you as well. I'm going to come back to you on that because I think you would play an important part. I think you do play a very important part in the work that's out there in the UFO field. Finally, I just want to let you know as well that one of my end goals, what I think I'm going to do in my career, is I'm going to set up a news network, and it'll be called the International Spiritual News Network, the ISNN, and we will be reporting the news as it happens, but then looking at it from a spiritual perspective as well, like an alternative perspective. But we would also like to cover, political activism and anything to do with the UFO field as well. So I just want to extend a hand brand out there that I love what you do, and if this news network would look at things from a different perspective.
Well, I know how smart you are. I know how much you know about these subjects. I have no doubt that any project, Kevin, that you get into will succeed.
Just as we end this then, Stephen, with so much respect for your work and what you do, I really do have that. What would you like to give as a final message to the audience right now?
We're going through, it wasn't planned and you weren't ready for it, but we're going through extraordinary times. The worst pandemic probably in the history of the world when it's finally done. It's not over yet. At a time when there's a lot of people and a huge economy, and the ability of such a pandemic to do harm is far greater than any in the past. We have enormous political upheaval. The risk of nuclear war is now assessed as the worst ever by the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists. People are not sleeping well. There's homeless everywhere. Even in Hollywood, where I'm staying now, there are tents all over the place, people living on the street. We're going through a tough time. But as of earlier this year, we were rapidly approaching the crossing point that would have triggered disclosure and the confirmation of the ET presence, which is independent of all these other things, okay? Has nothing to do with them. It is the presence of ETs, been here a long time, we're going to confirm it. That has been pushed back because of these other developments. Okay, but has it been significantly delayed? No, it has not. So much has happened that there is no going back. And this is going to be revisited soon enough. And we will get those hearings and they will lead to disclosure. And it could easily happen this year, depending upon how the vaccination rates go and how bad the Delta variant is. But we are going to get disclosure. And so whatever is going on in your life that is particularly unpleasant, and I know personally some people that are going through some really, really unpleasant stuff. Think about what a post-disclosure world would be like. Consider that it could be very close at hand. And if that makes it a little easier to get through the day, thank you. I'm happy to help.
Stephen, I really appreciate that message, and I'm sure that will help many others that listen to it over time as well. Thank you for that. And again, your website, just one final time, Stephen, is
ParadigmResearchGroup.org. You got to learn to spell paradigm if you want to operate in the 21st century.
Absolutely, and that's coming up on the screen right now, and that's in the description below. Stephen, I've really enjoyed having you on. Thank you for a 9-year catch-up in such a brief amount of time. Much respect for the work that you're doing, and I, would like to support you in any way I can in the future as well. So thank you for what you're doing.
You're welcome.